And Andrew DiCecco has a story up right now over at InsideTheBirds.com, and he joins us now with a look, his perspective on the Saquon Barkley decision and more. This game, obviously, nothing at stake for Philadelphia. They will be the 2 seed, but what about the way the Eagles have handled this? Let's get Andrew's take on it. He wrote a great piece over at InsideTheBirds.com to give more perspective on Nick Sirianni's decision. He ended the suspense, and we'll get into that in just a second. But first, I want to welcome and wish Andrew DiCecco a Happy New Year, my bud. What's going on?
Hey, Mike, Happy New Year. I'm doing well. It's never a dull moment in Eagle land.
Never is, and everybody's torn on this one. There are fans that say go for history. There are fans that say rest them and go for the Super Bowl. There are some people that want their cake and eat it too. They want both. But what do you think about the way Nick Sirianni handled this? He ended the suspense, as you wrote, at InsideTheBirds.com.
Well, I thought that was really the only way to play it and the most logical, because if your goal is to make it to the Super Bowl, you give yourself a better chance if you're able to take this week, which the Eagles have played 12 straight weeks without having any sort of a break, and give yourself a chance of reprieve to get better, to get healthy, and rest and get ready for a deep postseason run, which is what the Eagles are hoping for. And I know there's going to be a lot of folks that have the school of thought, well, you know, you can get hurt in the postseason on the first snap. Yeah, you can, of course, but the goal is to get there healthy and have all your best players available for the postseason run. And when you're playing against a Giants team, probably they don't have anything to play for, but you worry about the chippiness given the circumstances of that game. And it's not just Saquon that would have to play. It would be the offensive line, the starting wide receivers, and that, to me, would be very short-sighted.
Yeah, and, you know, I thought the Eagles told us everything we needed to know in the Dallas game. As soon as he hit 2,000, that seemed like a goal for them. He hit 2,000, and then they immediately pulled him from the game. I think that was something that they valued. Now, it doesn't mean they don't value getting this, but you just kind of mapped it out. You would have to play the starting offensive line, and you talk about it. Last year when they went to Tampa, A.J. Brown, he got hurt late in the year. People forget, Reed Blankenship got hurt. Sidney Brown got hurt. Yeah, so they lost guys in a meaningless game at the end of the year last year. They do not want to go through that again. I mean, we saw Jaylen Herz run the ball, get hit in the head, and now he's been out 2 weeks. You can't have Saquon. As you said, you can't legislate injuries. You don't know when they're happening. He might not get hurt in that game. But do you think if it was – there's so much into this that makes it interesting, Andrew. It's the Giants. It's the Maris stuff. If it was closer than 100 yards, like if it was 50 yards or 40 yards, do you think they'd take a crack?
Probably. I think because knowing that Saquon could probably get that on a couple of carries. But then again, the other part of that is, and now I'm changing my mind, is that Saquon only had 40 yards at the half last week. And there's no guarantee. And knowing that the team's going to sell out to stop the run, I don't think that would make a lot of sense to go for it. Just knowing that all season long, the Eagles talk about, you know, we're trying to focus on the big picture. We're trying to accomplish bigger things, you know, paraphrasing. And you talk about the mission not being over, this and that. And then to do that would be sort of hypocritical, I think, and go against your messaging. So I just think that Saquon, he had 31 carries in that game. And he's had the thigh issue for a couple weeks ago, and Landon Dickerson's been in and out of the lineup. Mekhi Becton's been in and out of the lineup. Lane Johnson's banged up, and the sense I got after that game on Sunday in the locker room from multiple players is that they would have been totally okay with sitting that one out because. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of wear and tear.
I was going to say, you're in the locker room after the game, and it seemed that a lot of guys were on the side of we need to rest up. You know, would there be – it doesn't feel like there's division in this decision here, right? Like there aren't guys who are like, come on, let's go get this for them, and the organization's saying, no. No, I didn't get that sentiment. I mean, I'm sure there were some pockets that really wanted to go for it. But all it takes is one player on that offensive line that maybe might not be crazy about going back out there. Someone maybe like a Lane Johnson who's had ankle issues and he's been banged up. I mean, A.J. Brown is still dealing with the knee issue. He was listed on yesterday's estimation injury report with knee rest. He got hurt last year in the finale. Like I just thought, all it takes is one player to say I'm not for that, and it kind of messes up the operation. But I just don't think that. I think it was kind of
Yeah, if you're Saquon, you're excited about the opportunity to get the record.
Sure.
But I think eventually, okay, coach, we're going to do what you say. We're going to take your best. You have our best interest. And there was no division or anything like that. You got the sense that he was disappointed.
I was going to say,
no.
Are you surprised? Because it seemed like he was kind of saying all the right things and team player. Even early in the Giant game, he had a chance to go for the single game mark, and he said, nah, let the other guys eat. So it kind of gave you the perception that records and that kind of stuff didn't really matter to him. But he did speak earlier this week, and he did seem a little disappointed. Maybe in retro, he said, I slept on it, and I thought – I guess if you're that close and you know you can get it, it's human nature to be disappointed. Do you sense disappointment from him, or is he really disappointed that he's not getting this opportunity?
Yeah, you could sense disappointment. You could hear it in his voice when he was talking yesterday, and that's to be expected anytime you have a chance to – potentially unseat someone who's held a record for 40 years, and it's one of the more highly coveted records in NFL history. I just think that, you're going to be a little bit disappointed. But then again, you have to remember this is a team sport. It's not an individual. Individual accolades mean nothing, compared to what it could mean to win a Super Bowl and do it together as a team. But the Eagles aren't going anywhere with an injured Saquon Barkley. They're not going – their chances of making a Super Bowl are severely depleted if Saquon Barkley is not healthy or able to make it through the postseason. So I just think that the bigger picture in mind here was preserving health and looking at considering all factors.
We're going to Week 18. Andrew DiCecco from the Inside the Birds podcast, InsideTheBirds.com, joins us for Football at 4. It's our first Football at 4 at 2025. So tell us, Andrew, you've watched them 17 weeks in 2024. Who are the Philadelphia Eagles after you've watched them now for this season?
They're the best team in the NFL, in my opinion. And, perhaps I'm a little bit close to it because I've been covering the team, this 2024 team, since the spring and seeing them grow through training camp and then seeing them progress throughout the season. But I really do think that they can win in any stadium. They can beat any team. You have to really rack your brain to find a weakness on this Philadelphia Eagles team. And they are seemingly hitting their stride at the right time, which is a lethal combination. And whereas there might be a team like the Lions, who I thought peaked a little bit too early, and they have a ton of injuries, and I just think right now the Eagles are really dialed in. They're singularly focused on the task in hand. The team camaraderie and chemistry is at an all-time high, reminiscent of the 2022 season. And I just think they're more talented.
Any concern that Jaylen Herz isn't going to play for, going on almost 25 days by the time they get to the playoffs?
Not yet. Not yet. There's no rhyme or reason to the protocol. You have to. Everybody passes through at different times. Will Shipley has cleared. Then again, it took only a week for Sidney Brown and Ben Van Sumeren to clear. It took a couple weeks, I think, for Slay. So it all depends on the player, and it's not anything to worry about unless it starts to seep into the later stages of this week, where you start to saying, oh, okay, this is lingering a little bit more than we're accustomed to seeing concussion protocol last. But I think the Eagles are obviously going to take every precaution possible, as they would with any player, especially with Jaylen Herz there, and they're not going to. You can't come off you can't be out of protocol until you log a practice, and he hasn't done that yet. We'll have to see what happens this week. Even if he's limited, that would tell you that he's cleared.
Andrew Goddard, what's up with him? I know he had the opening of the 21-day practice window. Is he a guy you want to see play in the last game, or just get him healthy and plug him into the playoffs?
Well, it's interesting because the Eagles placed on Wednesday tight end C.J. Usama on injured reserve, leaving the Eagles with only Grant Calcaterra and E.J. Jenkins on the roster at tight end, knowing that Dallas Goedert is eventually going to be coming back. But I would imagine that he's probably back as early as this weekend. But that doesn't. That's not to suggest that he plays in this game. I don't think he's somebody that needs any snaps. But to add him to the roster, get him back into the full swing of things, so that come week one of the postseason, he's really able to hit the ground running. And to me, I think that's going to be the three tight ends that they move forward with. And it was estimated that he would have been a full participant on Wednesday had they practiced. So that's certainly encouraging. I think he's really rounding the corner here and should be back in no time.
We're talking with Andrew DiCecco. A couple other things. We'll get some thoughts on this game because I do have one specific question for this game. We told you earlier 6 Philadelphia Eagles made the Pro Bowl. One guy I want to zone in on is Cam Jurgens. This is his first Pro Bowl as the center. I think that's kind of significant because you had such a run from Kelsey, but now Jurgens is 1 for 1 as the center. And just and by the way, Landon Dickerson also made it. So did Lane Johnson. So 3 of the 5, and you probably could make an argument that Mailata should be on the Pro Bowl team. Not that anybody cares about Pro Bowls anymore, but it's still a recognition for your season. And by the way, Mekhi Becton, those guys all had Pro Bowl at least level seasons. But Cam Jurgens, and I guess it's been kind of swept under the rug a little bit of the importance that he has had taking over for such a legendary figure.
Yeah, centers are often they fall under the radar unless you're Jason Kelsey, and I think that in a season in which there's been so many different storylines, so many prevalent storylines, records being shattered or near being shattered. In the case of Saquon Barkley, sometimes it's hard to appreciate how good Cam Jurgens has been this year. And the honest answer is he's been exceptional. And going into the season, he was one of the players that was heavily scrutinized, taking over for Jason Kelsey, and sometimes there were unfair expectations placed on Cam Jurgens. I just think that he answered the bell. I know a lot of folks were worried about the transition. He's a little bit undersized. He hasn't played a ton in the NFL, and they were putting all their eggs in the Cam Jurgens basket. But I was one of those, ad nauseum, I said, Cam's going to be just fine. Jason Kelsey picked him out. He's had years to work with Jeff Stoutland. He's worked on his strengths and weaknesses. And I just think that there was never a doubt or any sort of hesitation from the Eagles that he was ready to take the baton and run with it. And you're seeing it right now. And they're not only in the running game, in the passing game as well. He gets to the second level really effectively. And I just think he's been a steady and consistent player. He's played over 1,000 snaps this year as well.
I want to go to the defensive side of the ball for a guy. That's the offensive player that kind of was under the radar, had to kind of hold your breath, see what you're going to get from center. Jurgens passed the test. How about the season, Zack Bonnell? He's a Pro Bowler, but he might be in the conversation, or should be in, for maybe Defensive Player of the Year.
I mean, yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Look at his tackles, look at his forced fumbles, his overall, his sack total from a linebacker position. I just think that he's, across the board, he's been dominant, and not only just in spurts. He's been consistent all season long, and he's been a player that Vic Fangio has placed a lot of trust and responsibility in his defense. And anytime you're sort of the engine that fuels a top-ranked defense, I think you deserve some praise and league-wide recognition. I think right now Zack Bonnell is trending in that direction. And to be honest with you, Zack Bonnell never lost. He always believed that he could do this. He always believed that he had the ability to transition to inside linebacker whenever asked. And it didn't matter what anybody else thought. It didn't matter any sort of speculation that from the outside. He believed in it, and I saw him get better throughout the summer. And then early in the season, you see how quickly he picks things up, his ability to read and diagnose. He's just a playmaker and a natural inside linebacker, and he really took the position quickly. And I just think that he has yet to scratch the surface of how good he can be because he's still relatively new to the position.
All right, I want to get a thought on the game on Sunday. Andrew DiCecco, it's obviously a meaningless game, but is there anybody or a player or something that you will have your eye on that you will be paying attention to?
Yeah, Will Shipley, the Eagles rookie running back. I do a rookie diary series. I have been all season long on InsideTheBirds.com. And this week, we'll chat Friday, Will and I, and he has it. Now we're not just talking about his ability on special teams. We're talking about a role in which he's probably going to see the lion's share of the carries. And now that he's cleared concussion protocol. So I'm looking forward to seeing Will. I'm looking forward to seeing a tight end named E.J. Jenkins, who I mentioned earlier, because he has a pretty good rapport with Tanner McKee, if you think back to the preseason. And he has a big body, 6'6", 260, former college wide receiver, and he just continues to get better. I talk to him every single week. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. I know quarterbacks, especially backup quarterbacks, tend to lean on the tight end a little bit, so I wouldn't be surprised if he sees a flurry of targets. Then defensively, I want to see Eli Ricks. Eli Ricks hasn't played a ton at all this season, a handful of snaps on special teams. A lot of folks even forget he's even on the roster. But I just think that he's a player that I'll be keying in on, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Yeah, there's a good ones as well. I'm going to get your take on Bryce Huff and whether or not they let him play and just say, yo, go out there and let it loose to see if they can get something from this guy. He was the big ticket free agent signing. We forget that. It's got swept under the rug. But do you anticipate that he'll get a shot to just go out there and play freely and maybe make an impact?
Yeah, I mean, he only played 15 snaps last week. He's further down the pecking order. The issue is the Eagles can't sit everybody. It's not a 90-man roster like it was in training camp, so some players will have to play. Players that you're even counting on to play significant snaps in the postseason. But Bryce Huff would certainly be one of them. Jaylen Herz will be the other. But, yeah, I think that Bryce Huff will be able to kind of turn loose and pin his ears back and get after the quarterback, maybe build some confidence, maybe put some things on film, try different rushes that maybe Vic can go back and watch the film and say, hey, this really worked, or hey, I like what you did here, but let's tweak it and do this. And you can kind of play around a little bit in a meaningless game like that going against NFL competition.
All right, we'll get you out with this. Obviously, the Eagles are locked into the 2. Their opponents could be Washington or Green Bay. Do they have a better matchup? Do they match up better? They've played both teams 2-1. They lost to Washington. They beat Washington. And, of course, they opened up the season against Green Bay. Who's the better matchup?
I would say definitively Washington. You now would be playing a team for a third time. You know their tendencies, you know their tells, and I know the same could be said for the Commanders with the Eagles. But a rookie quarterback in the postseason is something that you would take any day of the week over someone like Jordan Love and a Packers team that, if you really look at their roster and look at their trends towards the end of the season, they are starting to play some really good football, and they seem to be a team that's on the cusp of really starting to hit their stride. I don't think you want any part of Jordan Love and that young Packers team. Xavier McKinney's a ball hawk on the back end. Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark. Like, they have a lot of playmakers there. The Commanders do as well, but they also have the rookie quarterback that you're just waiting for the turnover in the postseason, because a lot of times when those lights are bright, they try to make a lot of plays and maybe not take what defenses are giving them. And I just think that ultimately, I think the world of Jaden Daniels, and I think the Commanders have a very bright future. I just don't think I don't think it's their time just yet.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, great job as always. We open up 2025 with a football at 4. Eagles-Giants renew their rivalry at Lincoln Financial Field. You can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Kind of a preseason feel to this one, but that's because the Eagles are heading to the playoffs as the 2 seed. The Inside the Birds guys and football at 4 will have the playoffs covered right here on the Sports Bash. Andrew, appreciate you as always, pal.
Thanks, Mike. Talk soon.
All right, there you go. Andrew DiCecco for football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.